Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Stephen with you, and I hope that you're having a great day. Welcome to a broadcast of Newark United Pentecostal Church. So, as many of you know, I have 5 children. If you don't know that, I do. I have 5 children, 3 boys, Vincent, Caleb, and Marcus, and 2 girls, Candace and Cassandra. And so recently, some of you may remember me broadcasting before about the fact that my eldest, Vincent, is now matriculated at The Ohio State University and in his PhD program in computer science. So as we were preparing to go to Columbus, Ohio, and to drop him off, I asked him, I said, "So, son, are you going to miss me?" And he, in typical fashion of my children, spoke with honesty, and he said, "No, Dad, I'm tired of living with you." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you're just irritating." All right. Not the coolest thing to hear from your eldest son, particularly at the point when you're about to drop him off at college. But all right, so that's where he's at. He's at that point, he was almost 23 and ready to fly, ready to do his own thing. And so, all right, we roll with it. But it struck me interesting last night when his mama recognized that he was feeling a little lonely. In fact, he communicated that to us, that he was starting to miss folks, starting to miss his siblings. And he really didn't say he was missing me, but he said he was missing some folks. And so we were having family altar. It's something we do. We at the end of the day, we kind of pray together and share what's happening in the day. And so we FaceTimed him, and it was interesting. He was on for quite some time and had a lot to say and interacting. Enjoyed hearing the cacophony and the chaos that is our family altars. And it made me think of a story that I heard one time that might help you recognize a larger principle or a larger idea. And it's a story of a bunch of porcupines. And so these porcupines, well, you know how porcupines are. They're kind of prickly. They've got these barbs, and it's part of what keeps them safe. Most animals don't want to mess with a porcupine. They might get some meat out of them, but it's going to cost them a whole lot. In fact, there's a great YouTube video out there that you can search in which there's I think it's a leopard there trying to get a porcupine. It just isn't worth it. Every single time that he gets close, he just gets barbed and everything. So there's this bunch of porcupines, and the weather gets cold. And so cold that they're not going to make it. And so these porcupines realize that the only way they're going to make it is if they kind of snuggle up to each other. But there's a little problem with that. Because as they would snuggle up to each other, of course, they would inadvertently poke one another. And of course, when one porcupine poked another porcupine, it caused the other porcupine to react. And you know how porcupines react. They stick their quills out. And so you've got this massive porcupines all trying to make it through this winter storm. But every time one of them moves or inadvertently, not intentionally, but just inadvertently pokes the other one, it causes the other one to bristle. And of course, his neighbor then bristles because of him. And there's this constant pricking of each other, at the very least. And so as the night went along and as it got colder and colder, finally several of the porcupines says, "I can't take my prickly neighbors anymore. This is foolishness. I'm not being poked anymore." And so they left the group. Well, they stopped being poked, that's for sure. But you already know what happened. By the time the night was over, they were dead. Because the reality was that even though it was extremely uncomfortable to feel that neighbor next to them and to feel them poking them and then to react to that poking, and the reality was if they went off by themselves, they were going to die. The very neighbor that was prickly was both needed by them and needed them. And it made me think of my son, who, on the one hand, it seemed very attractive. Like, I can have my own place. I'm in my own apartment. I can run my own rules. I don't have to deal with my dad. But before long, and I'm sure he would right now, and he may even comment if he watches this video and say, I still don't want to live with dad. And I get that. I respect that. I understand. I want my children to grow up. But there's a larger principle than just a 23-year-old wanting to fly the coop. So many times we look at our circumstances and we go, if I could just get away from that prickly neighbor, whoever that prickly neighbor happens to be. Maybe it's your mother or father-in-law, or maybe it's hopefully it's not your spouse, but it might be, or maybe it's your parents, or maybe it's a next door neighbor, or maybe it's a boss, or maybe it's a coworker, and they always get on your nerves. They're always prickling you. But I'd like to challenge you today to consider something. Is it possible that even though, yeah, they're a little prickly, is it possible that you actually need them despite their prickles? And is it possible that they actually need you despite your prickles? Because I've found over time of life that not only am I prickly, but others are prickly. Not only do I prickle others or poke others, but they poke me. And we tend to bounce off of one another. We tend to react to one another. And yet the reality is as a human being, if I don't have community, I'm not going to make it. There's going to come a point where my body temperature is not going to be enough, or my skills are not going to be sufficient, or my abilities are not going to be sufficient, or my knowledge is not going to be all that's needed. I need my prickly neighbor. And yeah, they're prickly. And yes, I'm prickly. But the reality is, I still need my prickly neighbor, and my prickly neighbor still needs me. So last night, my son probably realized, and probably knew it before, that yeah, his family's prickly, and I am sure there are moments where he enjoys his autonomy, he enjoys his space, his apartment, and all of that. But on the other hand, he still needs his mom, he still needs his dad, he still needs his prickly neighbor. And even beyond family relations and people growing up, I challenge you today to consider, who's the people that irritate you and you think, man, if I could just get away from them? Is it possible that if you actually got away from them, it wouldn't be good for you and it wouldn't be good for them? Now, the story of the porcupines, as it's told, is that most of the porcupines, even though it was a very uncomfortable night, stayed together. And yeah, they poked one another throughout the night, and I'm sure, but they also learned how to not react so much. They learned how to, they'd feel a barb, and they wouldn't panic. They would go ahead and give their neighbor some space, and that made things a little bit better. And they learned how to spend that time in close proximity to one another because they needed one another's warmth. Together, they were better than apart. So the second part of my challenge to you today to consider is where's the community? Where are the group of people that you're better together than apart? I didn't say perfect. I didn't say you didn't prick one another, but you're better together than apart. So anyway, just a friendly reminder about your prickly neighbor. And oh, by the way, you're a prickly neighbor too. And so there was once a Jewish rabbi that had a little saying that he said, which is, do to others as you'd have them do to you. Maybe we need to remember that when it comes to our prickly neighbor. All right, that's all today. Hope you're all having a great day. Have a great night. I'll talk to you later. Bye.